Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Ocean City is set to hold a big shoulder season event while candidates gear up for next week's Wicomico County Executive Election debate. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Wicomico County Executive race is moving into its final month with Republican newcomer Julie Giordano facing off against Democratic rival County Council member Ernie Davis. Also on the stage will be the Libertarian candidate, Salisbury City Council member Mira Boda. In our studio this morning to take a look at these and other issues is Greg Bassett, editor and general manager of the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Don, how are you?
So let me ask you this. What should we expect from this debate, and how's the election going in terms of these candidates?
Yeah, these forums are always awkward because, they're not real debates. They sort of feel the same questions from the audience, but you get to see them under the lights and in front of the camera, see how they react. There will always be some kind of gotcha questions, some surprise questions. There will be the obvious questions. But this event is on Tuesday, and we will all watch it very closely just to see if they're kind of ready for prime time. It's one of the few public forums like this that will be on PAC 14. It'll be highly visible. But it'll be interesting to see what the differences are between the candidates. You see Giordano, who's kind of pivoting a little bit and not seeming as conservative lately as she did during the primary when she was trying to get Republican votes. Ernie Davis, as I've sort of complained before, has been kind of invisible out there. He doesn't seem to be actively campaigning like I would have thought he would have been at this stage. And Mira Boda is always good for some insight. He certainly has a lot of insight about the city, about the city's neighborhoods. So it's going to be always an interesting group.
In regards to Julie, what kind of pivoting do you see they're taking to take some of the edge off?
Well, she's definitely come out as very pro-business. One of the things I've been watching is her attitude about certainly the sewer situation in the county, where some of the other people who may be more on the right have been kind of skeptical. And she's going to be a very big promoter of the airport based on what she has said so far. And there are some people on the right on the county council that are more suspicious about how much money should be spent at the airport. But she seems like she's going to take this economic development mantle and reach out to the business community and try to improve things on that business front.
How are we to assess Ernie Davis? I mean, what kind of politician is he? He's been described as actually being a bit more conservative than one might think.
Yeah, Ernie represents District 1, which is the majority district on that council. He's been on the council for a long time. I guess he's coming up on 12 years. He succeeded Cherie Sample Hughes, who's in the House of Delegates now and is the Speaker Pro Tem of the House of Delegates. She's moved up and become very important. Ernie's quiet on the council, and he's proud of that. He keeps himself restrained. But in the last 24 months, Ernie has been the decisive vote on many, many issues. Two of the big ones were the tax abatement situation for that multi-residential housing, hotels, housing plan, developments of bigger than $10 million in downtown Salisbury. He was the tie-breaking vote on that one. He was also the significant vote on the replacement of Bob Culver as county executive. He did not vote for Carl Anderton, who was a contender. He voted for Dr. Renee Damaris, who ultimately did not take the job. But it came down to Ernie's vote on that, and it was crucial. So Ernie is one of those members who, maybe he doesn't speak a lot or present an agenda at the meetings. He lets things build up, and then he speaks, and his viewpoint is always heard at the end. He has put himself in that position for at least the last 2 years on the council.
And finally, what do we make of Mira Boda? I mean, he's running on the Libertarian ticket, not expected to get a large number of votes, but we'll see what happens. What kind of candidate is he? What kind of role has he played, particularly in the city council?
Yeah, well, from watching Mira develop as a politician, as a leader, he is the vice president of the city council. He's certainly very involved in the neighborhood issues. He's always been a libertarian. He's run in other races. I think he ran for Congress as a libertarian at one point. There used to be a lot of talk about libertarians, and you don't hear about them as much anymore, about what their position is, their role is among the parties. But he's a smart guy, and he's a very sensitive guy, and he's a pro-city guy. So he will definitely get that out there. Whether he's a fly in the ointment or someone who can really legitimately win the race, I don't have any idea. you just, when you don't have the backing of a real party, not that Libertarians aren't a real party, but a real party, I think it's really difficult to get elected, especially in this county. This county does have a Democratic majority of registration, but Republicans tend to do better than Democrats in most of the races. The county council right now is a Republican majority council. The last two county executives, the acting and Mr. Culver, were Republicans. And it seems like that Giordano is certainly leading in this race right now, based on her activity at least.
I want to turn to this task force that's been slated to take responsibility for trying to get the sewer access out to the rural areas. Where is it at this point, and how is it, by the way, in terms of relating to the fact that Maryland has struggled with septic tanks?
Yeah, this is one of those things, when I do the history column for the Salisbury Independent each week, you can see in the last 40 or 50 years, the same argument has been going on about the lack of sewer service in the county, in the rural parts of the county. So the city has historically, of course, had sewer. And what they have done historically, 30, 40 years ago, was they had an urban services agreement. So there were parts of surrounding Salisbury that the city would provide sewer to, not always water, but sewer to, at an inflated cost. So basically these people, like in that Pine Bluff area, just south of the Salisbury city limits, around Salisbury University, they had sewer service, but they would be paid a penalty. They would have to pay a penalty for that. They would pay double what a city resident would pay in lieu of being annexed into the city, and that seemed to work for a long time. There are people who want that to continue, and the crisis is severe out on Old Ocean City Road. You've got those neighborhoods that are east of Salisbury, where the houses were built 50, 60, 70 years ago. Those septic systems are failing. The lots are not big enough to sustain septic tanks under the current rules for septic tanks. The land doesn't perk the way it should in a lot of areas. You see that homes out there are having to go to the mound systems. It's so extreme that when you ride through those neighborhoods, those cul-de-sac neighborhoods, you will see that there are mound systems right in the front yard of these houses. So there's a real situation there that's going to need remedy, and the county is looking at what the remedy would be. Now, since then, the city has changed its rules in terms of what services it will provide. It will no longer do an urban services agreement. If you want access to the city's sewer plant, then you have to be annexed into the city. The mayor has said that he's willing to grandfather this, that you could take 10 years to be annexed. They're willing to talk about all those rules. Some of the county officials are like, wait a minute, it's not really the city sewer plant. It's perhaps the counties and states sewer plant that they provided money. I don't know if the county did, but the state certainly provided money to build that plant. The state will not let new plants be built as long as there's still capacity at the Salisbury plant. Salisbury plant is about 50% capacity. It has the potential to take more on. So the idea that state environmental people are going to allow other plants, packaged plants, built when they can access the city plant is problematic. So we're headed for a huge political fight over this. People who want the sewer service are willing to pay for it, but they don't want to be annexed into the city of Salisbury. So I don't want to say it's a crisis situation, but it's one of those things that's going to take real leadership. Now, to sort of egg this along, Greater Salisbury Committee and Chamber of Commerce have created this Blue Ribbon Committee. It's business leaders, it's developers, real estate people, and just regular business leaders. And they're meeting to try to negotiate and come up with ideas that will get the city and the county working together to solve this sewer issue. The county did finally, through George Miles and Burr, the great local engineering company, come up with a sewer plan. The council has accepted it. They accepted it. They haven't approved it yet. But it's a multifaceted plan that addresses issues in all the communities. Out in Pittsville, they are at capacity. Willards is at capacity. You look at some place like Parsonsburg, they have septic issues in that hamlet, in that community. Should they tie into the Salisbury plant? Would that be the most efficient thing? Should they tie into the Pittsville plant, which is already at capacity? If they were to do that, could Pittsville use that money to improve its plant? And then you have issues with the little tiny areas, and one of them is Whitehaven. So Whitehaven, the historic 1655 village on the Wicomico River in southwest Wicomico, people want to preserve that, but right there in the 40 houses that are in Whitehaven, pretty much all of them have failing septic systems. The septic is leaching into the Wicomico River, and it's a big concern. It's a big problem. So if you were to build a package plant to serve Whitehaven, how much would it cost? Would it be $3 million, $4 million to service those 40 homes? What would they have to pay? It would be exorbitant for them to pay their share. Would the county have to contribute? And there's little problems like that all through the county with different neighborhoods, different developments. We do have some package plants where the developers paid for their own plants to provide sewer so they could develop property. But it's this huge issue. It's far-ranging. But the biggest grind, the biggest sparks are going to be created where the city and the county are going to have to agree on whether county residents will have to be annexed into the city in order to receive services from the sewer plant. Giant bureaucracy in terms of Maryland Department of the Environment, and the Maryland Environmental Services, huge conflicts in all this bureaucracy, and things have sort of slowed down since the government's about to change hands. When the governor's people, Hogan's people, are gone from a lot of these departments, you've got new people coming in. So it's an awkward time, but there really needs to be some movement on this really soon because we're headed toward a real crisis.
I finally wanted to briefly ask you about this Vision Zero action plan, which wants to deal with traffic accidents, that kind of thing. Just in a couple of minutes, where are we with that? And looks as if they could take particular spots that seem to be where all the accidents really happen.
It's funny because I want to talk about this because it's one of those things we wrote a lot about it at the time. And now that it's being implemented, people are starting to complain. And they want to know, like, have you written about this? Yes, we have. This is what's going on here. And, people are seeing it as a real impediment to drivers. They're not able to drive as fast or as efficiently as they would like to. They're being slowed down by these speed control bumps, little traffic circles in certain areas. I think South Boulevard over there in that Riverside Drive area is one of them. There's more emphasis on pedestrian crossings to make it safer. Through the park, there's little circles and pedestrian crossings. There's certainly more bike lanes, which people love to make fun of or vilify the bike lanes for some reason. But people don't seem to understand, and I think the city hasn't done a good enough job explaining that this is to keep people from getting run over by cars. It's really as simple as that. This is a plan that has been implemented in some form or another in hundreds of communities across the nation. It's just now getting to Salisbury, so it seems like something new that the people who run Salisbury are crazy for implementing this thing and trying to distract drivers. But it's really just to get people to slow down, to make these communities more walkable, to make bike riding easier without risking your life every time you go out on a bicycle from being hit by a car. It's trying to save lives. So the intent is really good. If there's an inconvenience to drivers that are used to speeding along through their neighborhoods, I'm not sure that's a terrible thing, but people are really starting to react to this thing in a negative way. And it's another example of you really have to pay attention to the news in your community so you understand what's going on, and then you don't perhaps overreact or react in a bad way when it's actually put into effect.
We've been speaking with Greg Bassett. He's editor and general manager for the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Don.
We now turn to Ocean City, where officials are gearing up for what could be the largest special event in the resort's history. Ocean's Calling is a 3-day event that is bringing some of the biggest names in music business to the beach. And town officials say there are some 40,000 tickets for each day. Delmarva Public Media's Brian Shane sat down to talk with the Ocean City's Director of Tourism and Business Development, Tom Perloso. He says that planning for the event began a few weeks even before he took the job.
Our marketing communications director and the mayor had gotten a call from this group C3, and I wasn't even started working yet. I was going to be, a couple of weeks. So I was lucky enough to get called in on a meeting, and they pitched this idea of a music festival on the beach, and which we thought was a really good idea. We knew that this group C3 actually did the NFL draft. They do Lollapalooza in Chicago, See Here Now in Asbury Park in New Jersey, as well as Shaky Knees in Atlanta, and probably at 10 or 12 other sites. So we knew that they were legit, and they could drive some tourism dollars, into Ocean City during a shoulder month weekend, which in this particular case is September 30th through October the 2nd. And logistically, like I said, this is a very professional outfit. So every department, from our department in tourism to the police, the fire, EMS, transportation, public works, has all been involved with the planning of the event. This is going to be the Super Bowl of events for Ocean City. It's going to do everything we want it to do. It's going to provide the economics, up and downtown, and hopefully for years to come as we manage the event. So we're really lucky. We're really excited it's going to happen. We've got some great bands, the headliners with Dave Matthews, the Lumineers, and Alanis Morissette. The ticket requests, obviously it went on sale, and before you knew it, we have sold close to 40,000 tickets per day. We can hold a lot more, but we're also concerned about the experience. But again, everybody in town has played a part, even the hotels and the restaurants. So we feel like this will be about the biggest event we've held on a multi-day stage. And I think that based upon our phone calls here in the tourism office from California, from Oregon, from Canada, we're going to introduce Ocean City to a lot of new people, and hopefully that'll drive tourism later, next summer, or, once they find out how beautiful Ocean City is and how we can accommodate things like this on the beach. We're hoping to bring them all back on a summer vacation. So very excited about that.
What sort of feedback are you getting from the people who are here to make money over the course of 100 days? Your restaurateurs and your hoteliers, I'm assuming they're thrilled with this, but, more specifically, what are you hearing from that community?
We looked at historically what tourism has done in Ocean City. It was traditionally considered a sprint. And what I mean by that is all we did was advertise to get people in the summer. But in actuality, our strategy is to make it a marathon, which would mean that events like Moving Sun Fest, October 20th, having events later in the year, and then doing things in the Performing Arts Center year round is kind of the strategy moving forward. And I think that from a hotel perspective, just as an example, ADRs compared to previous years have probably tripled for that weekend. As an example, and I'm probably going to be light when I say this, if it was a $99 hotel room, it's now $350. So adding to our economy, allowing jobs and people to stay working longer, driving new tourism. As I mentioned, again, this is the Super Bowl for us, and we're excited to see it in play. We vetted it in Tampa, and we'll be heading to See Here Now to make sure. But we're all over it, and we're going to put on a good show.
I like that you mentioned See Here Now, because I think that's probably the closest to what we're working on. But Asbury Park is like a postage stamp. They're almost like the size of Dewey Beach. They're not very big. We're way bigger. How would you compare the two?
Well, obviously they're smaller in one aspect, but they are, adjacent to, New York City and that major population. However, it's a 2-day festival in Asbury Park. We're 3 days. And we, there's a lot of similarities. Their boardwalk is actually wrapped into the event. Ours is not. However, it is adjacent to the event. Their event is also on the beach. Our event is on the beach. So there's a lot of similarities in, logistically how to plan and develop a program to provide a great experience for our guests. So we see nothing but positives coming from that event. They've been there 5 or 6 years. So we're hoping to do the same thing here in Ocean City. 30 years ago, Sunfest was kind of like the end of the season. And now, our season's stretched basically through October, even longer. So we moved Sunfest, 3 weeks later. And this October, 20th through the 23rd, we're going to unveil a new Sunfest. We've got all free entertainment and quality entertainment. Our stages are all outdoors. Our craft tents, our food tents are going to be indoors, meaning inside a tent. We're having great tribute bands, Neil Diamond, Elton John, Earth, Wind, and Fire. Those are all free, which is kind of unheard of. So, we're hoping people still come out and support it. Our vendors will be there. And I think you're going to see some exciting things, and people are going to say, hopefully at the end of this, I wish I would have attended, or this is better than what I thought.
What do you think was the impression of Springfest and Sunfest before you decided to make these changes?
Well, Springfest and Sunfest has always been received pretty well. I think that, they're legacy events here in town. It attracts a certain demographic. I think the opportunity exists to, expand the demographic, create some new elements in there to attract some new guests and visitors, to try to infuse some more energy. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're not taking away the tradition. We're just adding to it and starting anew.
What is that demographic?
Well, typically it's an older demographic. So I'm going to say 35 to 54 is or even older are your typical folks that come by. And that's great. They have discretionary income, discretionary time, but we still are a family resort. We still have certain segments of the population that we're going to try to market to: millennials, Gen X, Gen Y. It doesn't, our strategy is completely different how we communicate with our potential guests. We have a new ad agency, BDK, who's got the pulse of what we call an East Coast beach vacationer. And we've been seeing a lot of traction in our tourism efforts based upon, that effort that they've put together. I will tell you, we're limited to 750 seats in a tent. We may expand Sunfest and Springfest to be a town-wide event. We might utilize the Performing Arts Center. We might do events at particular businesses. We hope the businesses get involved. And then we could stretch what's typically a 4-day festival to 7 by involving the town. So this Sunfest, as an example, this year, October 19th, which is Wednesday, we're going to open up Sunfest with a Broadway show, Chicago, here in Performing Arts Center. And then on Sunday, the 24th in the evening, we have the Art League doing Artrageous here in the Performing Arts Center. So it's going to be bookend. We're looking to see how that goes. We're hoping people will enjoy it. We've got great, ticket interests. And I think that, the town's been really, really excited about Broadway at the beach. We got a lot of that coming this winter. Got a couple of comedians coming in, Bill Engvall, Lewis Black coming in, Hairspray, a Fiddler on the Roof, as I mentioned, Chicago, Respect. And then one of the other plans is to develop Martin Luther King weekend. We're in the process of kind of planning, a nice little festival inside here at the Performing Arts Center with jazz, Motown, blues, the whole 9 yards. So exciting things to come.
Yeah, that's squarely in the dead space of the winter. MLK, that's a very bold move there. So you're really, is it possible we could eliminate the shoulder season? I mean, the unreachable goal of being a true year-round resort. I mean, it sounds like you're really trying to take steps toward that. Is that the goal? Is that even possible?
Well, that's the goal. I mean, the goal is to be a year-round resort. We're not going to be a summertime resort with 300,000 people a week in the winter, but we can make some significant strides to keep our product open, to be able to attract new employees. And what I mean by that, we need to convert part-time employees to full-time employees. We're very dependent upon J1s. However, if we could expand the season, allow the businesses to create, some additional income, then instead of part-time employees, we would probably end up being able to hire full-time employees. And I think it's great for the town. We're looking for tax revenues. We are a resort town. Our function is, leisure, resort, fun, escape, and you're going to see some new things coming out about that too. So, but our mantra is really more being proactive. So we're going to try to get out ahead of the game, see what's out there rather than wait and see. So we've got one mission, and it's pretty simple. Ocean City is an attraction, and we'll relay that big brand campaign slogan and where we're going to be as the next month unfolds.
Things were done the same way for a long, long time. I mean, for decades when it came to the shoulder season. I think that's a direct reflection of the leadership who were elected to serve on the town council, and they did it the way it had been done. To what degree do you think this new direction is a reflection of the current members of our city council and our city government?
Mayor and city council really get all the credit as it relates to the direction and strategy. We may have presented the vision, but, they are really the gatekeepers. They agreed and they wanted to see some change. So they're all on board. I haven't heard anything different. And again, they've provided us the tools. They allowed us to build an internal team. I'm so excited about the spring of 23 and what we're going to do. It's going to be really exciting. And I think the stakeholders here in town are really going to stay behind us. We've got some momentum that's brewing. We're very transparent as an organization. And we have found that we were getting the support we need. So, again, if it weren't for mayor and council, allowing us to do that, we certainly would be way behind.
Okay, last question. How are we paying for all this? Is there a new source of revenue, or how does that?
The town's not spending any money. The event promoter is paying for all the in-kind services, which means in-kind services mean whatever police, fire, EMS, tourism, staffing, materials, they're paying for everything. And on top of that, they are providing a couple of bucks toward each ticket sold, as well as a lump sum dollar amount. The revenue is based upon the room tax. Obviously, 60% of the room tax generated goes to the city's general fund. The pay for police, fire, public works, et cetera. 40% is dedicated toward advertising and the attraction of visitors here. So the better we do as an organization, the more money we have, both townwide in the general fund and advertising wise. So it'll allow us to do different things. So we have a constant goal of trying to increase the ADR, the RevPAR, the occupancy rate. Usually we just worried about the summer, but with the advent of the opportunities out there, it's a year-round thing for us. So October, November, December, January, February, March, and April. Yeah, we want to beat last year's statistics and move ahead farther. So many people you can only get on the island in the summer. So we're kind of, the only way to grow is to grow the season. This is a win all the way across the board. This is a $30 to $50 million economic benefit for the town.
Ocean City's Director of Tourism and Business Development, Tom Perlazzo. Meanwhile, so many attending such an event means more cars and more traffic congestion. Shane talked with City Manager Terry McGeehan about the factors that may impact the event.
There's two pretty obvious things. One is the weather, and just hoping that the weather cooperates with us. And then the second is really when the concert ends, making sure that we can do our best to make sure everybody can get home safely. We're encouraging everybody to the extent that they can to walk to the event if they can, take the bus. The last thing you want to do is attempt to drive and park downtown. Honestly, parking is going to be extremely limited downtown because the event, begins at noon and you have a number of acts that come on as the day goes on. We don't expect the entry into the event to be as much of an issue, but certainly when the event's over, we know we're gonna have a lot of people that we're gonna have to move. So we encourage everyone, be patient, expect delays, just like you would if you went to a Ravens game. Gonna take a little while to get out. Maybe when the event's done, go have a nice, late meal and wait a little bit for things to thin out.
It makes me think of the first couple of years we had the air show and the traffic, what that was like when literally everybody left the boardwalk at the same time.
Right.
That was nuts.
You're going to have the same thing. It's going to be like, after fireworks on 4th of July. So again, honestly, really the best thing to do if you're not walking to your destination, I would say go have a bite to eat, watch the ocean for a little while, let things thin out a little, and then make your way home.
Again, that was Ocean City Manager Terry McGeehan talking with Delmarva Public Media's Brian Shane. Details for Ocean's Calling can be heard on our website, delmarvapublicmedia.org. This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.